Hello, welcome to True Hoop with me, Jarod Hector, and True Hoop CEO and founder, Henry Abbott. How are you, sir?
Good, man. I'm not David Thorpe.
You are not David Thorpe. David Thorpe is in Las Vegas, summer leaguing it up and working with players and talking to agents and doing all those things. And then David's going on vacation. So, folks, you're not going to hear from David for a little while.
Until July 29th, I think.
Yep, the 29th. But it's all good because when he's back, he'll have lots of stories for us.
And I do feel like maybe we kind of overworked him a little. Like
you said that in text. You're like, we might have cooked him too much in this break.
I was kind of aware of I was away writing a book, and David was just he's like the chef with like a million pots, and and his tone during our group calls got a little more tense with each passing week of the spring, right? And so now I think it's correct that he would be off for a little bit. As in my role as CEO, I'm like, let's not kill David.
It's a real problem.
Things, yeah. We want him to be alive.
Exactly. Well, Henry, this is usually the time of the show where, we get some update in David's life, whatever. We're going to do the same with you. You are at an interesting point in your life. Your youngest child, you have 2 children, is going to college this year. So you're kind of gearing up for that. But it's like old hat for you now. All right, one more out of the house, and now we're done. It's just me and the wife. All good.
Well, this one's different. Actually, it's different today. So that kid and his 2 friends are, as of yesterday, driving to Utah. To take one of them to college, and then 2 of them are going to fly back. But packing up they have a beat up old SUV. I mean, it's not. There's no glamour, and it's 75% snacks in there.
Listen.
They just have so many snacks.
Young men on the open road in America. I mean, this is what every movie starts this way. Right? This is what it is. You just,
I read on Jack Kerouac's On the Road, and the whole thing is they stop when they can, and they panhandle for the change to get cigarettes and then apple pie and ice cream, and but they're carrying nothing, right? This is the opposite of that. This is hundreds of dollars worth of Costco goods. I guarantee they're going to arrive in Utah with more than half of the food they left with. But great. I mean, great. I think it'd be great. But it was a little rehearsal. Right now we're having a little rehearsal of now we're empty nesters.
Mm-hmm.
There are no kids here.
Yeah.
Which means when there's the frying pan with the scrambled egg residue that nobody cleaned,
one of you 2 did it.
We've been blaming him forever.
Now you really find out, shit, it's him. Who? I think it was me. I might have had
there is an asshole in this house. So that's going to be a little rough to do.
Oh yeah. Listen, you learn new things, right? You're like, maybe it's me.
Yeah. No, I didn't have any eggs today.
Okay. The eggs weren't me. Listen.
No.
Very nice. Then he'll fly back, and then it'll be his turn to head up to the Boston area, right, for college.
Yeah, we're keeping all the Abbott kids in a close proximity, within a few miles of each other. It
makes your life easier when it's time to go visit on Parents' Weekend. You're like, great, kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Honestly, for a little while, there was a real chance we were going to have 1 kid in Atlanta and 1 kid in Boston.
Just problematic.
I actually love Atlanta, and if they could both be there, that'd be cool. So there was a little, I don't know if you have ever visited Virginia Tech.
No.
But one of the things that they tell you, I've talked to those parents, is you can't get there.
Blacksburg.
It's very hard to get to.
Blacksburg, a little challenging.
There's a bunch of kids from around here who go to school, and they just all get in the car together and drive 7 hours.
Out on that. See, Boston's what, 4.5?
Yeah, and if you're already there for your other kid, it's no distance at all.
So I mean, that's a win to me. Winning at life.
Yeah, pretty good.
You guys planned that out well. Congrats to the Abbotts on good college planning.
Yeah.
Listen, that's what matters, kids. Not sending them to where they want to go. Sending them where it's optimally good for you geographically.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, parent convenience is paramount. Yeah, yeah.
Well, listen, it's been about their convenience their whole lives, right? Really? So why can't we have some convenience?
I mean, to be totally honest, we were visiting my daughter in Boston, and my son was a junior in high school, and he just wasn't that interested in college. He wasn't driving us to take him to visit things, and we finally got to the point you should visit some colleges.
I mean, that might be helpful.
And I'm trying to get a little pushier about it. I don't love parents playing a big role in this college search thing, because then it's the last thing you want is your kid to end up at a place that like you drove them to.
Correct.
It's like, how stupid is that, right?
Yeah, you want them to be there. Yeah.
So he ducks out. Like while we're doing all of our stuff with my daughter, he ducks out to visit like the closest college. And he comes back, like, that's where I want to go. And we're like, you know what? Like, it's just not like you need to sample more places than, but
yeah.
So then we drove him all, we flew places. That's just where this is where he's going. This is where he wanted to go. He's so excited. We're like, great. I'm sorry that we made you waste a year traveling to visit all these other places. You were right.
So many rules there, folks. Trust your gut. Number one, like, you know what you like go with that. Right. It's just, but it's also, who knows, it'll be parent corner, but this is fun. I think it's interesting though, right? Like children are different, right? Obviously, like people who have multiple know this. They're like, they're just not alike, right? I'm sure Molly was very like, okay, here's the place I want to be, like very sort of like early taking.
That's came downstairs and told us where.
That's who she is.
12 places she was applying to,
Correct.
and then which ones. And here's the spreadsheet and all that.
It's like, I'll think about it maybe. But it's going to work out fine, right? Because it's in his time and how he wants to. It's a beautiful thing.
I'll tell you, I know, this is really getting deep into parent corner, but like, our local high school, like it's a public school here, and like they happen to have a really good college counselor, and they have some software where you can kind of see people from your high school who applied to whatever school, like what SAT did they have, what GPA did they have. Yeah. There's a little chart, right? And she's like, every single person who wants to go to college should apply to 3 where you're like safely in that thing, and they don't use the word safety school anymore. Don't.
But I mean, can't say that. All right, but we know what it means.
3 that were, you're on the line, and 3 where it's a little bit outside of the zone, and it's pretty mathematical. You can look up your schools, right? And I'm pretty sure it's a great idea, right? I think that if you apply to these 9 schools, you are going to have real options. Yeah. Like, so when Duncan was being a little like not very Molly-ish in this, like it worked out so well. I just put a blank piece of paper on the fridge with like, category 1, 2, 3. Okay, quick, 1, 2, 3, just blank, Yeah. Just being a dick, really, just kind of shaming him into like, do you have any of these filled in, And I'm telling you, I put it up there on like a Tuesday, and like by Thursday, he had written in all 9. And then we did it. And we visited those schools and all this stuff. And it was all a waste of time, but it was still, I felt really good about it,
But there is something to, if in anything in life, if you're fortunate enough, choice, right? Like, and I always like 3 as an option, right? Like, and it's that idea of like one that's like the reach, one that's the probable one, and then one that's like, well, this will give us a lot more buffer, right? Whatever it may be. And then you just pick one, like,
Yeah. And also like when you make a big decision in life, like getting married or which college you
buying
go to,
a house or whatever.
Like, buying a house. Like, what's for sure is it's going to get complicated down the road. It's not blissful forever with any of these things, right? Nothing in the last years is like, oh, happy, right? Adopting a dog, whatever, all these things. And so to me, I'm like, you better get the one that you really feel a connection to. So when it's hard, you're like, this is my school. Yeah. Like this is my place. Yeah. If you're there because you thought you'd have a slightly higher salary, right, or because U.S. News will report whatever, like, then when it gets really hard, you're going to be like, I never even wanted to
go here in the first place. Exactly.
And that's not going to work. You're going to start sending off a vibe that's going to make the school not like you.
And it's going to be a rough time for you there, my friend. Yeah. Real rough.
Yeah. You want to be all in, right? Like you do. Like, and it's going to be better if you're all in. And that's going to come partially from the spreadsheet and a lot from just your heart, right? It was just like, I can see myself.
See that? Look at that, folks. Use your heart, man. Look, so not just science here. Science and art. We do both sides of the coin here. All right. So, Henry, here's something interesting that we talked about on our content call this morning. It's very warm in the world these days.
As hell.
Particularly here in the Northeast, although I feel like much of the country is experiencing this. It's just super hot and humid. And experts did say, I remember reading and hearing, this has a chance on record of being one of the warmest summers we've ever had. And we know climate change and global warming, very real, right? It's been happening for decades, and we're seeing it. I mean, we've been touching 90s for quite some days in a row here, which, I mean, we do that on occasion, but at this prolonged period, not often do we get it like this regularly. And it made us think about, well, athletes, if we, and you and I are both runners and people who do athletic things, and I would say I function fairly well in the heat. But we're not elite NBA athletes or Olympic athletes. How are those people going to do come their major competitions in this oppressive heat and humidity?
Yeah, it's I mean, I watched a little bit of the U.S. Women's National Team soccer game. They had a friendly on Saturday afternoon here in New Jersey, and like against Mexico.
Peak humidity.
And yeah, it was really hot. And as the game, the U.S. is like, I don't know what they're ranked globally, but pretty high,
might be
right?
2. 3.
And Mexico, I think, is 29th. And in the first half, nobody scored, and you could see the play was like just not as crisp and exciting and elite, and it didn't have these like sort of exciting like ping ping ping, like the ball pinging around and people cutting hard, and there were a fair number of just mental errors, just like really 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 good players like kicking the ball to the other team, stuff like this, right? And as someone who had just spent a part of that day like doing yard work or whatever, I was like, I know exactly what's wrong, right? It's 94 degrees and 95% humidity or whatever there was, something like that, and people don't perform their best at that in that environment, right? And then okay, that made me think about, and it varies who can handle it, right? Some people can really handle it, some people can't, and you can train for it. But like if you grew up in California, there's no way you're as ready for this humidity as if you grew up here, right? Like just no way. And so a bunch of stuff this made me think of. One was I was sitting in a very good seat for I looked up, actually it was the 2014 NBA Finals, Game 1. This is the Miami Heat in San Antonio. And this was the year, I guess, the Heat had beat the Spurs in 2013, and now like it ended up being the Spurs revenge, right? And in the air conditioning didn't work in the building that night, and it started like as the kind of place people like fanning themselves, at their program or whatever, and then it just built because all those people in a building like that in Texas in June,
brutal.
It just and the net effect of it was, many of the players like moved in a way that looked identical to how they would normally move, where they sweat a little more or whatever. But LeBron is a particularly thick-chested man. You don't need me to tell you that. But I tell you that also as we both own thick-chested dogs. Not taking for LeBron to a dog, but I'm just saying like the surface area, the heart is far from the surface. Like there's a lot of, like this dog that is to my right now, like she can't last a block on these days unless I take her like 7 and other dogs are out there walking fine. Little Italian greyhounds.
Life's
whatever.
Great. What are you talking about? It's fine.
Fine. Yeah. So one of the things that happens in this Heat, and they could see it on the TV, and you could see it in this finals game, was like LeBron left the game with 4 minutes left, didn't come back. They carried him off with massive cramps, right? And a great regret of my life is that no one, including the people who worked on my team, like nobody really got to the bottom of, did the sneaky Spurs do that intentionally? I don't say I'm not saying I know. I'm saying it. If you were looking for a strategy to get LeBron out of the game,
that's a good one.
Worked.
Good idea.
Anyway, so there's that. And now, like for whatever reason, the way sports money is going right now, there's more and more. Like we had the World Cup was in Qatar. There's a Doha marathon, Dubai marathon.
A marathon in Doha. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, and like, and then there's a thing, right? Which is the surplus money. The highest bidders for these sporting events comes from these oil-rich nations, and it is this hot because of this oil.
Correct.
And I'm like, it's fine. You guys do your stuff, whatever. But like, I think that someone like the administrators of the sport, right, should do a better job of thinking about what makes elite athletic performance, right? Like this Saturday afternoon in Jersey was not a good time for the U.S. Women's National Team to play good soccer. Like it was just kind of subpar. LeBron in the pressure cooker of that San Antonio, not the best LeBron, right? This is not, that guy wasn't an elite player, in fact, he wasn't even a player at all, but so I just think there's like we're in a moment of sports where, with our Emirates
Emirates Cup.
Yeah, and teams keep going to the UAE, and I play inside in air conditioning. I get it, but I think that, and right now everybody's in Las Vegas,
Summer League,
one of the worst places to be in the world. Like, we're kind of an air conditioning league right now. We can't work without air conditioning. I don't know. I think that as a sports administrator, like, what about your kids playing in the park? No.
Yeah.
Not today. Not tomorrow.
No, it's and you mentioned the Emirates. The USA Olympic men's basketball team are in the Arab Emirates right now, right, through
Yeah.
their USA Basketball Showcase. And look, you and I talk about this all the time. The rare commodity and the thing that gets us into the arena or onto our TV to turn on are these elite peak athletes. That is what we tune in to watch. Not is it the Emirates thing or none of that shit actually. For people like us, we know because we dig into this. But the average person turns on the TV is like, I want to watch that LeBron guy. I want to watch that Sophia Smith woman. I want to watch Caitlin Clark. It's the person, right? That's who tunes you in. And if we are not creating environments for them to be at their best, then what the fuck are we doing? Like, what is this?
Yeah. That I think I've been recommending to you and to everyone this Malcolm Gladwell podcast series on Hitler's Olympics. Like, and you can kind of see, I think there's only 3 episodes out maybe, but you can kind of see like, during Hitler's rise, he found sports to be very useful in his propaganda. It's way more complicated than that. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, but I think like this is kind of how sports are being used now a little bit, right? Like, that these governments are unpopular that are lavishing this money on covering themselves in sports, right? I think in every case they have like persecuted minorities. This is a way to look good while you're doing bad, right? Sports is like on your side if you have extra money for this, right? And so I think that's where. Well, are you ready for a little story from my book research?
I am. Let's do it.
So this did not really make it in the book in a detailed way, but before World War II at Harvard, there was a thing called the Harvard Fatigue Lab, and they had like an animal room, and they had a heat room, and they had an altitude room, and they had all kinds of funding to just exhaust people and animals and just see like what fatigue is actually a very tricky thing to study. It's not like one thing, like you could be short of sleep, you could be short of glycogen, you could be short of oxygen, you could be, on and on. And so they found a bunch of interesting stuff. One of the key things they found was that we're crazy adaptable. Like, the military ended up kind of like becoming involved during World War II with like, how hard can we work soldiers in North Africa? And the answer was like, well, day 1, they're going to really suffer. But like by day 14, they're
used to it. Yeah.
Like they can really adapt. And it's hard to even find hard limits. Humans are so wildly adaptable. So on the one hand, that would argue, we're tough, we're strong. We can prepare, athletes can prepare for this kind of heat and deal, which is amazing. It's a triumph of the human spirit. But there's another part of this fatigue lab story, which is that before World War II, before the military came in, it was actually funded by the Rockefellers. And it was part of the business school. Jarod, think about that.
Yeah.
You're seeing how hard you could. And at this point, the Rockefellers owned like some mining operations in South Central America. And there was some kind of like waterfront work in the bayou. I forget what they were doing. And the lab ended up wanting to bring in the workers a lot to like interview them about like how they felt. And after a while, the workers were like, no, we don't want any part of this. And like, you can literally, there's quotes, like I, because I'm a devious weirdo, I looked up like the Rockefeller Foundation annual reports from this era, when they're explaining why they're funding this. And they're literally like, basically like the biggest obstacle in business is control. And they're like, this will permit us like more control over the workforce. Right. So, okay. That seems pretty creepy.
You think?
Pretty bad. And not so different. Like that's on my mind when I watched, like, I cannot remember now there was a major international marathon that they had to move to like ridiculous time, like 6 or 7 a.m. So everybody didn't die out there. And I'm like, why do we have these people running through the streets of a city where no one would ever run? Right? Like, talk about control. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you think about it. This is why the World Cup in 2022 was in December, because you can't play in July and they'll melt. And by the way, newsflash, the players didn't melt, but look at the injury rates of everybody who played World Cup into the following seasons, and almost every major player suffered some kind of something going on. or some dip in
Yeah.
performance, like, because it was madness, absolute madness.
And I think about this too, while we've been recording, a UPS person has dropped something on the front porch. I think about that UPS person, right? Like a lot of people are working in unsafe heat right now, and this is our planet. And I think that you do want to err on the side of bosses who are like, "Hey, are you good?"
Bosses who care might
this
be
work
good
for you?
That might be a good thing.
Yeah, and there's to me, like, sports has done nothing on this front. I looked up you can look up the terrible list of football deaths from heat stroke.
Oh my God.
And it's not just high school. There was a Dallas player a couple years ago.
It seems every summer there's at least one story at some level, whether it be youth, high school, college, pro. Someone dies in the summer from football practice. Happens all the time, and it's always extreme heat is the area where it happens. Almost every summer.
There's always kind of like a dang, that's disappointing. It's like, no, this is like, we need to plan for this. Like, we need to prevent this, right? Like, or we're just not doing a good job. We're not doing it. Like, there's the real job of setting the time and place for the sports, and like those people should look at the weather app. Like they should.
Oh, not looking great today. Don't think we're doing practice today, folks.
Yeah, or come up with something else you do that day, or you need to do the real, like, we're gonna train into this, right? Like, we're gonna, whatever the Harvard Fatigue Lab stuff was about, how you get the adaptation, so that honestly, one of the things that changes is the salt content of your sweat, like, evolves over. Like, in the first, I think I'm right. I think I have it right that at first you just like give up way too much salt when you first get hot, and then you can't get hydrated because you don't have the salt to like process the water. But over a week or two, that changes, right? So like, you're going to want to be adapted in that way before you go do your big.
Well, it's interesting, workout, right? Because that certain, and this has happened for a number of years, like, right? Like, a lot of American athletes in whatever sport, whether it be basketball, football, whatever, but we'll talk about basketball because that's the sport we cover, would go to even warmer places than where they are preseason to do a month to whatever it is of training. In tennis, Roger Federer is famous for this, right? Would be in Abu Dhabi, right? In preseason, preparing to get ready for the marathon that is a years-long streak of. And for him, it's like peaking at the right time, which is right, those big four majors and the ATP 1000 events. Like, and so to your point about the salt, right? It's getting your body used to those conditions. So when you come back to someone that's like baseline normal, it's like, oh, I can handle this, right? It's like training at altitude, right? We do this in swimming, right? You go to the U.S. Training Center in Colorado Springs, train at altitude for 2 weeks. You come back down to Earth. It's like, oh my God, all this great oxygen we have down here. Feels great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we are adaptable, right? But not everybody, some people have some limitation, right? Like, some bodies aren't going to be good in the heat, right? Or won't be as adaptable, I guess. And so you're shifting it a little bit, right? I'm pretty sure I felt like when I was watching the soccer game on Saturday, I'm like, these five are fine.
Yeah, they're okay.
Right? And like when they brought doping to cycling, it helped some people a lot, and some people not so much. Like, it just changes who's on top, right? And so does the heat, right? It just changes who's on top.
It's interesting, Henry. I was at an event on Saturday night, it's a tennis event, and just talking about athletes and peak performance, and you mentioned doping, and you talk about athletes and like the idea of like training. And when I say training 8 hours a day, I don't mean like you're literally training from 9 to 5 without a break. I just mean like your full day of, whether it's pre-work with stretching and all that, then your lifting, then your actual technical work on your whatever sports you play, right? And the course of a day, 8 hours. Like, I don't think your body is really meant to be doing that, right? Day after day. But the way that a lot of athletes can do that is because they're on what's known as EPO, right? And EPO helps you in your recovery process, so that tomorrow I can go 8 hours again, right? That's the biggest part. I think there's this misconception around like performance enhancing. I think we all use the caveman, like, but no one wants to look like the Incredible Hulk. I'm like, it's not. That's just like 1,000 years ago. That's not. Nobody cares about the Incredible Hulk. Yeah. That's not it. It's that I can do 8 hours literally every day for 3 months straight, which is fucking insane.
Yeah, it is insane. Well, and it's not like, it doesn't make you live longer, right? It's not healthier. It gets you into this more extreme short-term thing, right? You're kind of trading. It seems, there's not great research on this, but it's pretty good research, right? Like that, I did write that story about like, people who use PEDs are like 6 times more likely to die of sudden cardiac arrest. Like you're kind of fucking with things
for sure.
A lot of extreme sports is this, right? Like Olympians don't live particularly long, right? When you push your body really, really hard, in some ways you're just aging more.
Of course.
Right? Like at P3, they're like, look, you're, these, whatever stress you and I put on our knees, like in the NBA, they just do it. They just age faster. Their knees just age faster, right?
And
same for their kidneys, probably same for some other internal organs.
And it's interesting, right? Because we've talked about this a little bit off air, but these people trade on their bodies, right? That is the commodity that makes them money. So it's on the one hand, it's almost I'm like, you kind of get it. Like, well, if I have a finite window to be at the peak of my sport, which is where for almost every sport, it's where the big earning dollars are, right? If you're a tennis player and you're ranked in like 50 to 100, life isn't so great around there, right? Life's great in the top 50. You know how good you got to be in the top, and to stay there. And I'm not saying everybody's doping. What I am saying though is you could see that the incentive to do that is there, because how am I going to make a living otherwise?
Well, and hard workouts are essential, right? And think about that. Think about just like the feeling inside your own body of like, I could do it in 6 minutes, but I'm gonna try to do it in 5 minutes and 20 seconds, right? And you're just like, you're just like, all of the work of being a professional athlete is just to get this little 0.5%, 1%, whatever, if you just keep dialing in all those things, you might get from the 51st ranked tennis player to the 30th, and that could change your whole life. That little edge isn't something most of us think about, but it's what they think about exclusively. And that's exactly why the drugs work. Right? Like you can take some drugs to give you 1%. Like, you can? Like, you know what I do for 1%? Like, it's the biggest deal ever, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's their whole project is this 1%, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, it's very, and in some sports, it's just not well policed at all, which seems to me like almost I don't blame athletes at all.
An invitation to do it.
Obsessing on this. Yeah.
And again, because that is what their whole life is built around, right? Is being at this thing. And again, the window's finite, as you said. There is no 60-something-year-old pro athletes making hundreds of millions. That's not a thing. Like, right? Like, you've got and look, LeBron doing it at almost 40. Like, you got a short window, my friends. Like, and then over for you. Now you could say, oh, but come on, they already made $200 million. How much is enough? I mean, I get it, but it is what it is, right?
Well, in the sports where there have been big scandals and all the people testified and, all this has become public, right? The most common, there's some Lance Armstrongs who were like, ha, 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 I'm going to win everything and cheat this way, right? But then the sport just speeds up. And there are many more characters who are like, oh no, like I can't keep up with the professional pack unless I dope, and I never wanted to dope. And like they say, it's about 1,000 days in cycling, right? It's about 3 years of being ardently determined not to dope, and then you just face like, I'm going to be literally retired at age 22, 23, 24, or I'm going to dope, right? Like that's why you have to police it, is for that kid, right? Like okay, the Lance Armstrong figure, he's kind of a diabolical weirdo anyway, right? Like I don't know how you prevent him. But you need to police it for the people who are just trying to be good people, and just want to be professional athletes. Like, like it shouldn't be required.
No, right? I'm with you. And it would be helpful if there was some sort of like across the board, very clear, we have all these, we have WADA, we have USADA, there's all these, like everybody in their own, and all these lists of, these are banned on this list, but not banned on this list. It's like, come on, people. Like, if we just had some uniformity, and you could really argue that about a lot of things in life in the world, right? We all agree these 10 things, no, I can't do them. All right, cool.
Yeah.
They're out. We're going to test for them,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for it to be uniform, the NBA would have to give up control.
Which no one's doing that.
Never. And I think just a little friendly reminder, we're now in time of year when NBA testing is minimal. I can't remember the number, but like the total number of tests over the summer is not big. And if you miss a test, this time of year, it's okay. Right. And if you miss another test, you can pay a fine. And if you miss another test, you can pay a fine. And the fines are, I think, at their peak in like the 5 figures, which means if you're a rich and successful player, you basically don't have to get tested all summer. But if you're struggling on the brink and can't afford that fine, then you might fail test. And that's how they negotiated it. And we can all wonder why it would end up that way, right? How fucking weird is that? It's a really weird setup. It's no other sports organization I'm aware of on planet Earth has a setup like that, right? And in like track and field, if they Kara Goucher was like one of the top runners, and she has a good podcast now. And I've noticed on her social media, she ran clean, she's proudly clean, and she competed against a lot of people who doped. And she has a little chip on her shoulder about the fact that like the people who run the sport didn't make it easy for her, right? So every time there's like a reported violation, she'll like retweet it, and she'll be like, this person won the silver medal in 2014, whatever. And but a lot of them are what they call whereabouts violations, right? This means that testers came and knocked on your door and you weren't where you're supposed to be. And like we know one thing that like this is a loophole you could drive a Mack truck through, because it means when you're dirty and they knock on your door, you just hide under your bed and don't open the door, right? Or you tell them you're in Tenerife when really you're in Gran Canaria or whatever, right? And but that's like, this is one of the most common kinds of violation. There are very prominent, including American runners, sprinters, and stuff who have failed for this thing, and they can be out for years. In the NBA, it's just allowed. It's effectively allowed, right? Like we don't have whereabouts violations in the summer. Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's a ridiculous loophole. Like that's ridiculous. It makes a mockery of the whole testing program.
I mean, yes.
Like it means you don't have to be tested.
Essentially, right? And then ultimately, we don't care. Again, this is not saying that the NBA is dirty, but it's saying that the league does not care if it is or not. Because if they did care, they would be much more stringent about it. So if it is, it's kind of like, well, kind of like, it's kind of like we didn't see it, so it's not there, right? If we don't see it, then it's not real. And it's like, well, okay, maybe that's one way to live life.
And I had it years ago. This personnel is all changed now, but like years ago, I had a conversation with a guy from the Players Association, and I was like, basically like, you guys have agreed to terrible testing. And he's like, why would I ever want a single player to fail a drug test? And I was like, because a lot of your players for now are clean, and it would make it so they can like stay that way. And he was like, I don't understand what you're saying.
I love it. What do you mean? I don't
know. Fuck that. Shut up. Not how we do it.
Don't ask any questions. Listen, all of this stuff is just things that, again, as Henry often says, look, if you want to just zone out after a hard day of work and watch your 2 hours of your favorite basketball team, you don't need to care about any of this shit, right? Like, just enjoy your sport and go about life. But for those of us who this is our life covering this league, and these are questions that we might want to know about, right? Maybe what's going on with this? Why don't we have this kind of testing, right? Why can't we protect our clean players, right? And then it's that pressure, right? Of like, well, shit, now I have to do what they're doing, so I can just stick it in this league, right? So I make it, and it's similar, right? A fringe player who might get tossed down to the G League or whatever, who might find themselves in Poland next year, versus someone who's got a 5-year, and then I'm a Supermax player, just like a 5-year guaranteed contract. That's a very different life, right? It just is. Yeah. And so,
there's all these, and like all the media goes along with it. Like I think I said this on the podcast before, but like Samaki Walker was pulled over with tons of steroids in his car, and he was like, "I'm playing in Lebanon, I think that's right, and it's legal there, and I'm just taking this stuff, whatever." I check my facts on that, but it was something like this. He definitely 100%. There's a police report that I've read online of like Samaki Walker. Yeah. His son is in the NBA. Jabari Walker. So what's Jabari's experience and knowledge of PEDs? And quite honestly, let's say he's clean. Like, why? I want to know about that. Like, what a cool, like, your dad was a doper and
you decided I'm not doing that.
Flushed out of the NBA and you decided not to. What a fucking hero. But the problem is that you can't brag about being clean in a sport where there's powerful people who are dirty, right? Because then you're calling them out.
That's not good. That ain't good for you.
Yeah. Lance Armstrong went off. He crushed the careers of people who were like proudly clean, right? And so to me, I'm like, we want to be a league where people are proudly clean, or I don't believe we're clean, right? Like you would have that. Yeah. Like clean players would want to brag about it. I've never heard a single basketball player say I'm clean.
It's true.
Have you ever heard that?
The subject of doping is never. I mean, Henry, nobody in mainstream media talks like this. Is not. I mean, the fact that we're talking about this in this podcast right now, who knows what's going to happen if this gets and picked up by a certain people, right? Like, oh, those true hoop guys, there they go again. But no one talks about this. This is not a thing.
Yeah.
But we know, again, take the NBA. We know in the world of professional sports, it 100% happens. It just does.
Of course.
It just does.
Like, I mean, I went to this, like, it was called like the Silicon Valley Sports
I remember that.
Performance Conference, something like that. And, you know, the stage is a steady stream of people who are like, you know, we're trying to find a little tiny edge for you with like a Whoop bracelet or whatever. And the fact is, like, nothing works. Like, you know what I mean? There isn't like an over-the-counter supplement or technology that like really changes your performance. Like what there is that works is the list of banned things. And like sleep. You know,
like quite important. That helps.
Like, yeah. But you know, to the extent that people are going to conferences trying to like really master, like, you know, how to get a little more out of their bodies, like those are the things that are banned. They're banned because they work, right? Because it makes it unfair, right? Like, and anyway, and that's also the other part of this debate is like it's expensive.
Yeah.
And it was like a big deal, you know, when it came to cycling, where, you know, basically Lance could afford the good doctor, and he paid him extra not to work with anybody else. So the other dopers worked with like the crappy doctor.
That's not good for you.
Which was often dangerous, right? Yeah, and like, so, you know, like the kind of doctor you'd meet like in a like a rest area.
Not great.
You know,
not
like,
great.
And so I think there's like a little bit of you know, we want these people going to good doctors. Like, and are those doctors recommending what? You know, like, anyway. So yeah, like the every athlete has to either dope or have a very strong reason not to, right? And like, if I ran the NBA, I would want people to be in touch with those reasons not to.
Yeah,
right?
here are the reasons not to do this, right? Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. It's, you know, it's a murky villain. As we said, we don't blame the athletes. Like, again, I empathize and understand. This is your entire life. Is how do I get this 0.5% edge? You know, lifting all these extra weights and mastering sleep ain't gonna give me that extra 0.5%. EPO 100% give me an extra 0.5%.
Very effective.
It was very effective.
Very effective.
Shit, I might want EPO for myself. It might make me do better.
See, that's how they get you. Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff.
We have a new sponsor for the show.
Brought to you by EPO. Oh man, too funny. All right, some on the court stuff. I thought this was interesting. The posture, Henry, of Bronny James has changed since pre-draft, draft, and summer league. Pre-draft, it was, we are not taking any two-way deals. We want guaranteed deals, or else don't even think about bringing this guy in, because we're not going there. And then it was, all right, it's the NBA. We're here to make an NBA roster. That's what it's all about, blah, 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 the whole nine. And then Bronny came out and said, I don't care where I play. As long as I play, I want to get better at basketball, something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing the end, which means, well, that would suggest you're open to playing G League basketball now. What do we make of all that, Henry?
I mean, I guess I see it as there are different phases of Bronny's summer, right? So when Rich Paul was making all, you know, so very powerful agent, known for driving a hard bargain, says no two ways. So what that means is, you know, and they only work out for the Lakers and the Suns, right? So to me, that means a very strong message to 28 GMs. Just like, don't touch,
even,
right? They're basically saying you can expect a holdout. Everybody would want him to be on a two-way, right? That would be exactly, we wrote that. David talked about that, right? Like he's a perfect two-way. But they're saying, no, he wants a guaranteed NBA deal. So it worked all before the draft. It worked, and it did let him land at one of their two teams they wanted him to land at, right? Once he's there, they don't have to worry about that. And then now he signed his guaranteed deal. Once those two things are done, the agenting part is over. He won everything, right? He got a kind of an outrageously big deal for a player of his caliber, guaranteed. And now there's nothing left to fight over, except, you know, does he need the team to keep him in the big leagues the whole time when he is looking at a season of maybe 0 minutes? Like, no. So now that everything's, you know, the hay's in the barn, now you can be like, oh, I'm open to anything, right? So I mean, honestly, chapeau. Like, it's all been played
Yes,
perfectly.
well played,
right?
well
Like,
played by collection,
yeah.
and it allows, right? If you think of LeBron as like a obsessed sports dad, it allows LeBron to keep tabs on how his son's development's going, right? Because it's literally in his backyard, the South Bay Lakers, right? That's where the G League team plays. So he gets to know what's going on a daily basis, as opposed to being in Des Moines or wherever the fuck if he was on some other terrible team.
Can you imagine being like the South Bay assistant coach who's like probably making 50 grand and is like, you know, some basketball lifer who's now like, if Bronny goes home to dinner one night and says like, that guy seems like a jackass,
You're
like,
out of there.
and literally like just
These are the challenges, though, right, Henry? When your father is LeBron James, right, arguably the most powerful person in the NBA, it just, because even if his intentions for his son are good, which I believe they are, it may make it difficult for other people who want your son to do well to do their jobs well, right? Because maybe they don't do it the way you want. You know, in David's piece where we talked about he needs 5,000 reference points on, and you're like, David, your plan's probably the right way, but it's 100% not going to go that way, right? That's not what it's going to be, you know?
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's challenging.
Well, it's like they have the red phone, right? It's like they can like, you know, call the White House or whatever, you know, anytime they want. But like LeBron's power is like, he's already overpaid now, right? Like he's in a different phase. Like he used to just be able to have like populate the whole front office with his people and all this stuff. And now it's like, you know, is he going to like 1 year, 2 years? He's like a person who helps an NBA team win, right? Like it's just not that much longer. And they get mad at you when you have a huge salary and you don't help the team win. And like, to me, like, I don't like LeBron knows life without the red phone. Bronny doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
And so like, it's going to be kind of weird. Like when some struggle comes up in Bronny's career and he's gonna be like, hey, can we just use the red phone? And they're gonna be like, oh, we don't have it anymore.
We have it. It's just that you don't have it. Like you're not allowed to use the red phone.
But he won't have it. Like honestly, like if you're like there's gonna come a time when LeBron says, hey, we need to like fire the assistant GM, and the Lakers gonna be like, fuck.
Wow.
You.
When do we think that day is gonna come though?
When LeBron's played 12 games out of the last 82, and like you know, and is saying he's a salary increase and he wants this, that, and at some point it's gonna be like, dude, doesn't like, you know, the Heat got a little rough with him, and he was like, I'm out of here.
He was still awesome with the Heat. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
He's not that. Well, Henry, here's the thing. We looked this up when we were hearing about his new deal, and you were like, all right, using our bonus wins and how much a win costs and all that. Is he still like, Henry? That's still a good contract for him. Like on estimated wins, 15.2 last year.
Yeah, no, he's really
still
good.
fucking awesome, which is crazy.
But just like the cliff is coming. I don't take any joy in this, but like the cliff is coming, right? Like nobody's like great at 42, right? And like he will be 42 soon, you know. I don't know exactly when between now and then, you know.
He turns 40 in December, so yeah. But still, 15.2, still in the 99th percentile, Henry, in estimated wins, and the 98th percentile in EPA.
Dick.
Like what the? I mean, Kareem's one of my favorite players. At this, he wasn't doing this. Unreal.
No, it is unreal. Yeah. Yeah. It is
unreal. I say, masterstroke done by Rich Paul, clutch, got what you wanted there for Bronny. And we'll see. And honestly, like I hope that now, because with the whole thing about playing at whatever level now, he gets closer to those 5,000 reference points. I still don't know if he'll get enough of them, but he'll definitely get way more than if he would playing with the varsity team. That's for damn sure. So I hope he gets a ton of reference points. And because, as you mentioned, he's got the best role model of what hard work is. So we know he'll do that, right? Yeah. The question is, can he develop all the skills necessary to be whatever version of himself he's going to be?
I feel like I'm rooting. Like I love players Bronny's age right now. Like I'm rooting for every single one of them, right? Like it is legitimately possible that he's an important contributor to a winning NBA team, and it's legitimately possible he's out of the league shortly, right?
Yeah, anything in between.
And like it comes down to this, like, oh, this work, you know, like you got to do the right work, you know, do it all the time, and do you have someone who can tell you what the right work is, and who can watch and see and recognize when you start missing free throws, it's because of this, as opposed to that guy, it's because of that, like, and it's a real crucible of just human performance, and you know, I I love to see it come together, but usually it doesn't.
Yeah.
Like usually it doesn't.
I mean, David and I were talking about Cooper Flagg, the #1 high school prospect who's going to Duke in the fall, who was on the select team playing against Team USA. And of course, all the videos came out, Cooper doing so well. And of course, the NBA guys were going like not 100% full speed, but still, he was competing. And they all talked like, no, we loved it. He competed. He went hard. And David's like, I mean, he could be amazing, but he's 17. Like, who knows what the fuck he's going to look like at 26? Even if where he is at 26, much less what he's going to look like at 26.
Right. And like, and I think David makes an amazing point that like some of the skills that we're talking about, like Bronny hitting NBA threes, is like a 3-4 year development curve, right? Like, so it doesn't matter what we see today. It just doesn't matter. It's not a thing, like there's a whole, I mean, in David's head, he could map out all the steps between here and there, but it's just like, we're at nothing. We're at zero.
Less than zero.
We're at less than zero on that. So maybe it'll work out. Maybe it won't. That's all TBD. And it's very stressful. I mean, I am on some email threads with Blazer fans about Scoot Henderson, who's actually not so different from Bronny in a lot of ways, right? Like, very athletic guy who maybe can shoot, maybe not. We'll see. And like I've stopped responding because just
19, 20?
Oh, it's a good question.
He's young.
Maybe he's young. He's young, and like nobody at the time I was like, nobody at 19 is good. Like literally nobody. So like he's got flaws. Yeah, everyone has flaws. 19 in the NBA. That's just how it is. So and the things that he has to work on, they take a long time.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite David story is when he tells about one of his players who really wanted to work at getting better at his handle. He's like, all wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. Coach, I mean, I got that drill. Like, how long before my handling gets good? 4 years. What? Yeah, 4 years.
I love that.
It's keep it up. All right, great job on day one.
Yeah.
4 years from now. Get at this.
And the reason isn't because of anything other than it's an extremely competitive league. There are a billion people who play this sport and they all want to play in this league. And if you're not the 4-year good ball handler, then somebody else is. And handle, shooting, these are things that lots of people are working on. And, if it's not that good, they just take the ball
every
away.
time.
They just take it from you. Or you can't have it. Or you don't get to dribble. That's the other option. Yeah. There's very few dribbles for you. Which means if you do 1.5 years, those 4 years, you just don't get the ball.
Yeah.
I'm not giving it to you, it's hard to wow them.
It is. That's the beauty of this league, man.
Case.
It is just, David always says, it's fucking hard. It's really
hard.
is. And I think, again, the average fan, we get fooled because the best in this league make it look like it's very simple. And I promise you it's not. I promise. It's just not.
They want to eat your lunch, and they will laugh as they do
100% they'll laugh.
Yeah.
They're fucking killers, man. All right, folks. We will see you on Thursday. Henry's going to be back on Thursday. We're going to talk about some more stuff, probably like dirty money. Who knows? We're going to go down a rabbit hole.
That's so 80s, Jarod. Nobody's talking about dirty money anymore.
We'll see what tickles our fancy then. And then a little programming note. The podcast will be off on vacation next week. So no episodes next Monday and Thursday.
Why is that?
David's away and I'm away.
David's away. Yeah. I'm excited for that.
A little beach time, man. Gotta decompress.
We're taking the big battery of True Hoop is plugging into the wall. It's recharging.
You ever see fucking electric car plug into a regular outlet and how fucking long it's man, this is.
I got that outside right now. Yeah.
Thing is the worst. It's it's been plugged in for 3 days and the needles moved this much.
It's a joke. They're really just, it's look what we made you do, you idiot. Yeah.
So yeah, we're plugging into one of the industrial sides for this week so that we're back and better than ever in a couple weeks. All right, folks, take care. We'll see you on Thursday.
See you Thursday.